Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Race week in Imola, big upgrades are on the way, but the big storyline again is around the potential future of Christian Horner and Red Bull Racing. Rumours started to emerge a couple of days ago that if these upgrades to Red Bull fail, Horner's job could be on the line, and some are saying that that could happen as soon as after this upcoming Grand Prix. Other sources, however, deny the rumours. What's actually going on? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Just before we start, anyone recognise this track here in the background? Yeah, that's right. So I got invited to an event tomorrow at the Silverstone Museum. Thanks to you all for watching the channel and supporting it, because, you know, opportunities like this therefore come along, which is really, really cool. So, yeah, I'll probably put some stuff on it on my Instagram tomorrow if I can, anyway, if they allow me to, and talk about it tomorrow afternoon's video when I'm back home. But, yeah, spending the evening here. It's pretty beautiful, not gonna lie. Let's crack right on with the video, and I'll close the curtains to make the lighting better. First thing, really, is this Imola graphic Formula 1 put together. So here's Lewis Hamilton, first home race with Ferrari in Italy. Of course, big moment. You've got Liam Lawson driving for the sister Red Bull team. They are based in Faenza, Italy. So I get both of these. I don't know why Albon's here, to be honest. I think it's pretty obvious that they should have put Antonelli on this one, because it's Antonelli's, like, it's been a long time since we've had an Italian driver. It's his first home race in Italy. It's like one of his favourite tracks, apparently. And that is a big talking point, actually, going into the weekends, because it was Toto Wolff who made the point in Miami that, wow, Kimi, what a great job he did, which is true, in sprint quali, and frankly, the entire weekend in general. You know, the sprint and the race weren't ideal for various reasons, but he did a killer job in qualifying, and that was on a track that he wasn't familiar with at all. Toto Wolff said that when he gets tracks that he's actually good at and familiar with and he's driven before, such as Imola, you know, expect something particularly special, but he not enough, obviously, to make the graphic here. This is the World Endurance Championship at Spa the other day. You know, obviously an absolutely beautiful set of footage, and people are saying, well, hang on a second, right? Does Formula 1 and Domenicali really see this and say, you know what, we need to extend at Miami for another 15 years? The reason why I'm showing you that, though, is because of this man on the left-hand side, Mick Schumacher, not, you know, Giovinazzi, but Mick Schumacher. He's been doing a great job at the World Endurance Championship as of late, putting on a great show, and great to see that Mick's career, after a difficult conclusion in Formula 1, is still going well, and the World Endurance Championship is definitely gaining a bit of traction right now as a series for, you know, positive and negative PR, let's say, of recent times. But the reason I wanted to mention him is because maybe he's back in the race. Now, Cadillac, let's be real, are they going to be that competitive? Probably not. But they do want some drivers, and they probably want some drivers that make sense. Perez makes sense as far as they're concerned, because he brings lots of money. That's the theory. But if they need some other driver, Vettel maybe is at least hoping, maybe trying to make it so that Schumacher could get that drive. It's understood that maybe there have been some talks. Will this happen? I still think it's relatively unlikely, but we know that Schumacher's been trying to get a return to the F1 grid. Did he do enough in his stint at Haas to really justify it? I'm not so convinced, but you know, if for Cadillac, it might make sense having the Schumacher name. If it doesn't happen, he can stay in WEC series and still do rather well, but it's certainly a talking point. This was also confirmed. After Imola, we go Monaco, Spain, Canada. They've confirmed the tyre compounds, Pirelli, for those races. I think this, to many, is somewhat disappointing. Monaco, of course, the softer compounds as always. Canada, they also tend to usually shift this way, although they are going very soft this year, with the softest down to the C6 at Canada. Not a massive high-deg circuit, but yeah, and obviously it can rain sometimes there as well. Spain is interesting, I would say, though, because they're going C1, C2, C3. These, of course, the hardest compounds of tyres that you can go for. And, you know, many were suggesting, oh, could they have gone a step softer to encourage more of a two-stop strategy this year? I think that was definitely a possibility. But no, they're doing what they normally do and just whacking on the hardest possible tyres. It is also fascinating, if you're unfamiliar with this, the idea that the soft tyre in Spain is going to be the C3 compound. That is not even the hard tyre in Monaco or Canada. So, you know, the qualifying tyre that they use in Spain will be a step harder than the hard tyre they were using in Monaco, and even in Canada as well. But that's just how Formula 1 works. They do it because it's easier to look at. A couple of quick words on Ferrari. We know that they're struggling to such an extent that Hamilton unfollowed everyone. I think Leclerc did the same thing. People were saying, damn, like 5 races, 6 races at Ferrari, and Hamilton's unfollowed his dog on Instagram. Like, it's all over. And there is some questions right now, and understandably, about whether there should be pressure on Fred Vasseur. Look, I think that Vasseur should be fine for a little bit of time, but he's no doubt that he will be feeling the pressure, certainly going into 2026. Look, I don't think Ferrari should be saying, oh, well, we've struggled this year, we made some mistakes in the off-season. Vasseur, it's time to go. I mean, look, they still put together a credible challenge last year. The SF24 was, frankly, a very good car, a very well-rounded car. In the end, not quite good enough. But Damon Hill's probably right that Vasseur will be feeling the pressure as it stands, feeling the heat, there's no doubt. And there's talk about, well, Vasseur keeps discussing the potential, but there are significant limitations in the car, mainly around the rear suspension. They will be bringing upgrades to try and resolve that in due course, but that is potentially a long way away, and the upgrades they're bringing for Imola and Spain are set to be relatively minor. So, Auto Racer are talking about it. They've got structural issues, potentially, or especially in the slow-speed corners, which is interesting because that's where typically they've been rather strong. Traction, low-speed corners, typically the fastest in those type of corners this season or last season. This season, it's very much a different story indeed. So, they've only occasionally unlocked what they think the car is capable of, but they're already so far behind that, I wouldn't say their championship hopes are in serious jeopardy. I'd say their championship hopes are dead. Like, let's be realistic here for a second. That's my opinion. You guys may disagree. McLaren are probably going to win the championship. If they do, it will be down to their brake ducts design, more than likely, keeping, they've not got more downforce necessarily than anyone else, even though they probably do. But that's not really where they're gaining their advantage. It's from being able to keep the tyres in the right temperature window. Now, Rosario Giuliana put together an interesting assessment here, especially with the race today, where they talked about what they think might be going on. We've discussed over the last few days phase-changing materials, some of the other potential. Look, the conclusion of this article, as detailed as it was still effectively, we don't really know. Like, that is the conclusion that we could draw right now. But they go through a number of reasons why maybe it's possible with airflow alone. I know Rosario in the replies was quizzed about the phase-changing materials thing, and he says, look, it's an interesting idea, but he doesn't think that would be legal. Look, maybe McLaren have a way to make it legal. What I liked from the article was this image, though, kind of comparing the brake ducts on the various cars. This is the Mercedes, bottom left. This is the Ferrari. This is the Red Bull. And look, Red Bull also have something interesting going on, which is not, like, incredibly dissimilar to the McLaren, but I think it's really no secret that McLaren design is substantially more complex, and there also could be more going on under the surface there than we're currently aware of, with, of course, these whole phase-changing rumours that have been doing the rounds. Whether there's anything to that, much more difficult to say, but the other teams need to figure out what they're doing, and frankly, they need to figure it out rather quickly indeed. Mercedes are potentially the team to watch for me in Imola. I think Max should be strong, typically is around that circuit, but again, plenty of traction zones where the RB21 might not be quite as good. Probably a better weekend for Max than he had in Miami, but again, I think Mercedes are an interesting team to look for, especially when Brundle said that as far as he is aware, Mercedes are pretty damn excited about the upgrade package they are bringing. So while Ferrari are saying, well, our big upgrade is going to come in, I think they even said, like, maybe Canada or something. I don't even think they said anything major is going to come in Imola or Barcelona, which is concerning for Ferrari. They've got that new suspension which they're planning for Silverstone, which is about 6 Grand Prix away at this point. So, not ideal. Mercedes, however, are bringing quite a lot, as are Red Bull. To be fair, McLaren, I'm sure, will bring some things as well. But that's what Brundle's saying, is that, look, McLaren, you've got to make sure you're not resting on your laurels here, because, like, who knows what happens in Spain, where the flexible wings are going to change, and Mercedes have exciting upgrades on the way in Imola. There's discussion about a new floor. That's the big talking point. We kind of didn't really know what these upgrades were going to be until this article's come out and said that, the W16 has strong one-lap pace, but it's not so good. Again, it overheats the rear axle, and that compromises tyre grip, which, again, does seem to be the big difference maker between the Mercedes and the McLaren right now. Certainly all the evidence of Miami, that is true. So they've got an upgrade package aimed at improving tyre management and thermal behaviour set to debut at Imola. It's going to include the floor, the front suspension, the cooling inlets, the beam wing, the rear wing. So it seems like this is pretty major for Mercedes. And look, if it works, who knows? If they can keep their tyres in a better window as a result of this, maybe McLaren aren't doing some sort of sorcery which is impossible to replicate. And if those things are true, who knows? Maybe Mercedes can seriously compete. A new floor is expected in Imola, modifications to the floor edges and the diffuser. These are aimed at boosting air extraction and improving load distribution at the rear. The improved air interaction between floor, beam wing, rear wing is expected to increase pressure differentials, etc, etc, etc. So there you go. How's it going to go? That's a very different question. But the big rumour that I wanted to discuss today really was around Christian Horner again, because people are talking about it. We talked about it a lot last year, and I think at some point we were pretty convinced the Horner was probably going to go. Now, has all of that drama totally settled? It's difficult to imagine that it fully has, right? I mean, last year, you had Jos Verstappen every week talking to the media about how Horner was hopeless, he had to go, the team was going to implode or explode or whatever word to use if Horner stays there. And then Newey leaves, Wheatley leaves, there's other individuals leaving the team, and Jos Verstappen was like subtweeting it saying, see, told you so. And there were rumours that Jos was talking with Toto about Max going over there. And, you know, so many reasons why that situation at Red Bull was unstable. Of course, starting with all the Horner drama at the start of, like, what was it, middle of February last year, all those rumours started to emerge. You had Helmut Marko getting involved kind of from the Austrian side of the operation. Horner was more backed by the Thai side and they owned 51%. There were all these rumours about that Horner wanted to kind of break Red Bull Racing away from the main Red Bull conglomerate, run it as its kind of own team, where Horner would be able to take some sort of control as like an ownership percentage in the same way that Toto has. Everything was happening last year. But then it all kind of calmed down. The Horner allegations eventually kind of finished. It seemed like it was all, you know, okay again. But there was no doubt that even a few races ago when Red Bull were looking a little bit shaky, Raymond Vermeulen was, you know, that's Max's manager. He was throwing shots at Marko. You know, Marko and Horner, every week they come out with something in the public again which disagrees with one another. Horner after Miami said that the floor upgrade has worked, does what they want it to do, whereas Marko says that it doesn't. And that might tell you quite a lot actually, because the rumour is that Horner's job is potentially on the line if the car doesn't deliver performance, right? Because look, they've won plenty of championships in a row now, certainly drivers, constructors over the last few years. But under Horner's leadership, things have got very chaotic, very messy. And while Horner has been undoubtedly, I would say, the best team principal on the grid for the last 20 years, let's be real, like it's difficult to argue otherwise, at least in terms of most effective. I would say that Horner, when you look at all the team principals we've had, Toto deserves lots of credit. There's other great team principals as well. But what Horner achieved deserves a lot of credit, I think. And people will, you know, understandably give him that credit, I think, a lot of the time. But still, he's not won everything, and even over the last few years, things have now got to such a degree that maybe Horner's time at the team could come to an end, right? I mean, when an organisation goes to what Red Bull have, especially if they win neither championship this year and the car's been in a very tricky spot, the second driver can't get anything done, it's a problem for the team. They might need a bit of a reset, and it's not like there wouldn't be the willingness internally to make that happen. So this is the big rumour over the last couple of days, and the latest one from, you know, Formula Passion here is describing how could happen even after Imola. So we heard rumours a few days ago that potentially the Imola upgrades are very important. If they don't work, then Horner could be at risk. But, you know, we're now hearing that maybe that could happen very shortly. Red Bull earthquake, Christian Horner on the verge of dismissal. In F1, a real bombshell is looming, basically. Autosprint talked about it. They identified Oliver Oakes, right? But let's not forget that now he's fled to Dubai. So that makes that rather unlikely. Now, Planet F1, now they always deny any of the rumours around Red Bull. Like, this is always how it is. So again, I take that with a pretty big pinch of salt. Like, take everything with a pinch of salt. It is what it is. But, you know, they say the Horner position is stable. Shareholders aren't concerned. His contract runs until 2030. But of course, you know how these go with these PR statements. Contracts only run until they no longer run. But the name that's now coming up around this, and you guys will have heard this name before, but may be surprising to you. What about Franz Tost? Of course, the old AlphaTauri boss, who stepped down after a very long time at the head of the team recently, based on what they describe as a serious disagreement with Horner, which does kind of make sense, to be fair, in hindsight anyway. Tost apparently had to leave his position in the Red Bull minor team due to disagreements with Horner, and now there's lots of talk about him potentially coming into Red Bull as their successor after, of course, you know, maybe a strong relationship with Helmut Marko or whatever. You know, whether this is true or not, it does kind of smell of a little bit of Helmut Marko intervention. I don't know what you guys think about it. But yeah, of course, it's conversation about Austria, right? We're talking Marko, Austrian, Tost, Red Bull Racing, Horner's kind of more of the Thai side of things. Like, in terms of the Thai ownership is more on his side than the Austrian side. So, yeah, things are real interesting at the moment. But there's an argument that there might be something to this. The reality is, I think it probably depends what happens over the next couple of rounds. If these Red Bull upgrades arrive and are very successful and effective, then it's probably not that much of a conversation if Red Bull are back, if Max is winning again, and, you know, if everything's going to plan. But if that doesn't happen, and it becomes increasingly clear to Max, certainly after Spain, I mean, look, I'd be very surprised if he gets axed after Imola. We've only heard these rumours that Horner might be gone over the last couple of days. And obviously the big rumour was that he was going to be under pressure if the Imola upgrades didn't work. Now we're hearing that he could just be gone after Imola immediately. And Franz Tost replacing him it would be a strange decision, I think. I mean, maybe it would be a good decision, I don't know. But it would certainly be a strange decision. So intrigued to your thoughts on that. The reality is the next couple of rounds do mean a lot. Although it may not matter in the longer term, I just wanted to close out with this here from Zach Brown, who made his thoughts quite clear on the team orders discussion between Oscar and Lando. So over the coming rounds, we might well expect some drama between the pair of them. Right now in the championship, Piastri leads, but not by a huge amount. There was a suggestion that with Piastri in the lead, when upgrades arrive, if there's only one upgrade available, do they give it to Piastri over Lando? You know, what do they do from a team orders perspective? The thing is, last year, they were well in the mix for the constructors' fight. This year, it's looking far more likely that they will simply win it. So, Zach Brown says effectively that team orders aren't going to be a thing, certainly not yet, and he says that unless one is mathematically eliminated from the title race, then they will basically treat them as equals in the scenario. So, and you know, for Lando or Piastri, regardless, to be mathematically eliminated, that's going to be a long way away, right? So, yeah, anyway, what they say is no team orders until that time. We won't give team orders or name a number of one driver unless, let's say, 5 races from the end, one of the two is already mathematically out of the game, which seems unlikely anyway. I think it could well go down to the wire. But, yeah, definitely interesting because some have argued that maybe McLaren should just say, look, Piastri's now our number 1 man, let's back him. But the reality is they probably don't need to, such as their dominance in the constructors. So this is, in my opinion, the preferable approach, not just from a team perspective to make sure the drivers are happy because they feel like they've got an equal chance, but also the fans are going to be loving it, hopefully, when we might finally get a Piastri-Norris battle on track, which I've been hoping for some time and may arrive sooner rather than later if Imola is anything to go by. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.